Hi, I'm Riley Michaelitis, and we're the UGA Dogs from the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, in the United States. We will be talking about the UN Sustainability Development Goal, ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusion in classrooms. The UGA Dogs are Noah Hopkins, a PhD student, Emily Townsend, a PhD student, James Mullenberg, a second year undergraduate, and me, Riley, a fourth year undergraduate. This slide shows the disparity in college education by race in the state of Georgia. As you can see, for the white population in the state, these students are represented at UGA in line with the state population. The disparity for Hispanic and Black students is glaring. These numbers show just how different experiences and opportunities can be based on race or ethnicity.
So it is hard to talk about quality education without acknowledging systemic issues related to race and ethnicity that contribute to educational disparities in the United States. There are gaps in education in regard to availability of courses, teacher qualifications, college readiness, as well as a lack of representation in educational settings. In 2016, the percentage of children under the age of 18 and families living in poverty were higher for Black children at 31% than it was for Hispanic children, which was at 26%. Furthermore, the percentages for both of these groups were higher than that for white and Asian children, who were both at 10% for families living in poverty. And then this graph shows that around 80% of school teachers in the United States are white. And this is in stark contrast to the percentage of Black and Hispanic teachers, which is less than 10%. Furthermore, public elementary and secondary schools that had more racial or ethnic diversity in their student populations also tended to have more racial or ethnic diversity among teachers.
In this chart, you can see the disparities when it comes to achievement on the highest math course credit, which is typically calculus. This impacts college admissions in science, math, and engineering majors as well, which adds to the disparities in education. College attendance rates are also very different. Although it seems that there may not be a huge percentage difference, this number actually accounts for millions of students that do not attend college, which will not have the same opportunities as other adolescents do. In fact, these disparities are even more apparent in college completion rates, with Black college students graduating only 40% of the time. The problem with retention and completion in the United States universities needs to be adequately addressed to close the gap, not only in educational disparities, but in income, access to healthcare, and other socioeconomic indicators.
As mentioned before, the disparities highlighted here have considerable implications for educational attainment, job prospects, and long-term health. The next slides will show how some of the systemic issues that we previously identified manifest after an individual transitions into adulthood. First, if we examine unemployment rates, we will see how African Americans and Hispanic individuals have considerably higher rates of unemployment, a direct consequence of lower educational attainment that we discussed earlier. If we consider annual earnings, the disparities between white, Hispanic, and African Americans become even more pronounced. Higher educational attainment has a direct relationship with professional attainment, which directly impacts the income that an individual earns on an annual basis. If we move to the next slide, we will see a study conducted by the Brookings Institute that shows Atlanta has the widest gap in home values between majority and minority Black neighborhoods, a factor that can be tied back to relatively low educational attainment within the African American community when compared to white people in Georgia. If we look at rates of healthcare coverage, we can see, again, these statistics continue to favor white people as they have higher educational attainment. Healthcare coverage is directly linked to professional attainment in this country in many instances, and high educational attainment, as we have said before, translates to professional attainment. If we switch to the next slide, we will see that African Americans and Hispanic individuals are far more likely to experience loss of healthcare coverage than whites. The disparity, again, tied back to low educational attainment impacting professional attainment which would allow that person to secure healthcare coverage or pay for it privately. Here, we see the impact that higher educational attainment can have on the likelihood of being forced to go without healthcare, which is the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States today. Those with a bachelor's degree or higher in terms of educational attainment are considerably less likely than those without higher than high school educational attainment to go without healthcare. If we continue on to the next slide, we see that Caucasian or white people are considerably less likely than African Americans and Hispanics to not have a relationship with their personal doctor. And if we move on to the next slide, we will see again high rates of relationships with personal doctors following bachelor's degree level educational attainment. Again, this is a consequence of having stable healthcare, which is directly tied to professional attainment in the United States. We now are going to change gears a little bit and talk about some of the solutions that we have proposed within our communities to tackle some of these issues.
Recruiting underrepresented faculty and staff would help to reflect diversity the university is striving for in the student body. A faculty that looks like the student body cultivates a supportive atmosphere between faculty, staff, and students. This can be achieved through recruiting in minority-serving institutions, such as historically Black colleges and university or HBCUs.
Openness to understanding historical contexts that may or may not be influencing all of our experiences today and translate into unequal health outcomes among different students and faculty determined based on their race. And also by recognizing that white people do not have the same life experience or face the same barriers as these underserved populations that we have discussed previously.
Another solution that we propose is requiring classes on privilege, race, gender, and equity. Materials of the course would cover the history of certain topics surrounding racism and sexism and how it ties into today's society. Classes could also teach how to properly respond to racism and sexism seen and heard. Classes could also address unconscious biases.
In addition to introducing curriculum that might serve to address some unconscious bias, a focus on scholarships that will increase representation of underserved populations in the United States in universities by recruiting from HBCUs or public high schools in urban areas stands to increase exposure to different perspectives and knowledge for all students, resulting in better problem-solving skills.
Stop recording.